All right, welcome everyone at today's webinar, Buying a Home in The Hague. My name is Rick. I'm a buying manager at EHN. I'm from the Netherlands. Currently, I live in Rotterdam. I'm responsible for the region of South Holland, so The Hague, Rotterdam, and anything in between. For my studies, I've spent some time in South Africa and Colombia. So I do know what it's like to settle in a new country. Oh, give me a second. Yeah. So we at EHN, we believe that greatness is achieved in the agency of others. So I'm not giving this webinar today alone. My lovely colleague Rafaela is joining as well. She will be there to answer all the questions you have in the Q&A. Maybe Rafaela, you can turn on your camera and introduce yourself.
Hello, good evening, everyone. So I'm Rafaela. I'm all the way up in the north here in Groningen, and I would be very happy to help you today in the chat. So if you have any questions, please don't hesitate and pop it there, then I can reply you.
All right, perfect, thank you. Yeah, so she will be answering the questions during the webinar. If your question isn't answered during the webinar, we have some time at the end. So we make sure you get your answers. It's not only me and Rafaela. We have some lovely colleagues in our buying team. As Rafaela mentioned, she's all the way up in the north, responsible for the region of Groningen. Then we have our other Brazilian queen, Joanna. She's managing everything around Eindhoven. And last but not least, we have our Amsterdam team, Ludo and Ellen. Both are from the Netherlands, but they have lived in some different countries as well. A little bit more about EHN. So we are no traditional real estate agents. I'll tell you a little bit later why is that. We support with buying, renting, and letting. Today's webinar, of course, is focused on buying, especially in the region of The Hague. I do have to say, for renting, we are at full capacity at the moment. So yeah, unfortunately, we're not able to support you there. And then letting, if you're ever interested in renting your property out, feel free to contact us as well. I said we are no traditional real estate agents. Why is that? We charge a fixed fee, where traditional agents often charge you between 1% and 2% of the purchase price. We believe that we offer the same service to someone who's purchasing for 900,000 as for someone who's purchasing for 300. And as you could have seen, we are either expats ourselves or we've lived in foreign countries, so we know what it's like to settle in a new country. The added value of EHN, first of all, selling agents, they take our office more seriously. The regions we work, we have a good network. So it's often selling agents, they know us. Furthermore, we make sure that everything which should be in an offer is properly mentioned. And then, of course, because of our network, we are sometimes able to book viewings when it's no longer possible. So selling agents often have special spots for their colleagues. So it could be the case that for you guys, it's not possible to book a viewing anymore, and we can still arrange the viewing. Then the next point, very important, we support by reviewing the Dutch legal property documents. So very important to check those before you submit an offer. Unfortunately for you guys, those documents are often in Dutch and can be quite difficult to understand, especially documents from a notary or technical documents. So we make sure you know everything what you should know. Next point, maybe the most important part of the buying process is we help you to define the market value through market data, right? I will tell you a little bit more about this later on. But again, I do think that this is the most challenging part in the buying process, and also, yeah, the most difficult. Then we won't inform you about any rules, regulations, or restrictions. Of course, every property has its own rules and regulations. Maybe you purchase a property with the intention to rent it out after a certain period because maybe you move back to your home country. Then of course we do need to know upfront if that's even possible. But there's plenty of other regulations you do want to know before you submit an offer. And finally, since we've been doing this for some years now, we've purchased a lot of properties. We've been through the process, so we'd like to make sure that you guys don't make the same mistakes as we've made. All right, so what will we cover today? First, we have a short introduction. Then we talk a little bit more about the market, some market info and the market drivers, very important at the moment, I think, very interesting. The topic of savings, so what would you actually need to be able to purchase a property in this market? 3 tips to win in the market. And at the end, I will cover everything by going over the timeline and how we as EHN can support you with the process. Yes, so let's talk about the market. I already mentioned, I think it's a very interesting topic at the moment. So if we look at the numbers, recent numbers, Q3 2022. First, if you look at the graph, you see the development of the average purchase price in the Netherlands, right? So from 2008 to 2013, you see prices decreased. Of course, this was during the financial crisis. From 2013 to basically last quarter, prices have been increasing and quite fast, right? So, I think last year we had an increase of 20%, the year before as well. But now, for the very first time in a long time, prices decreased. So the average purchase price in Q3 was 425,000 euros. Those numbers are for the entire Netherlands. And that's a decrease of 5.8% compared to the quarter before. If we look at it compared to 2021, so from a year, the price has increased by 2%, but definitely not the 20% we had before. So again, very interesting. If we look at the Hague market, right? So almost 1,600 properties were sold. A decrease of 5% compared to the year before, an increase of 13% to Q2, right? The Q1 difference is compared to Q2 this year. And then very interesting, the number of houses for sale, 1,826. That's an increase of 113% compared to 2021. So you can see that the market is changing, right? Back then we had a very, very competitive market, but now you see there's much more properties on the market, which for you guys might be interesting, right? So you have more properties to choose from. The increase compared to the beginning of Q2 was 27%. Of course, more properties on the market will affect the price as well. The average purchase price in The Hague was 437,000 euros, a little bit higher than the average in the Netherlands. Compared to 2021, not much of a difference. So you can see that the prices are more or less equal. But compared to Q2, there was a decrease of almost 7%. You see similar numbers for the price per square meter. And then again, interesting to see the market is cooling down a little bit. So the sales times last quarter were, or it was 31 days. And that's an increase of 34% compared to a year ago and 24% compared to Q2. So yeah, you see the market is cooling down. If we stick to the point of the sales time, a difference I see in the market, and I think Rafaela can confirm this. Around a year ago, basically every property had a deadline, right? So there were a lot of people that wanted to view a property. It was really hard to book a viewing. So then they scheduled all the viewings for this week, and then there was often a deadline. And you could make your offer, let's say until 11 a.m. on Monday. Everyone could make one offer and that's it. And what I see now is that there's a little bit more negotiations with the seller, which of course delays the process a little bit. So that I think that's a good example of the current market, or the change compared to a year ago. Some market drivers. So what caused the prices to increase, right? So what were the reasons that the prices increased by 20%? First of all, you have the tax exemption, which is still applicable. What do we mean by that? If you purchase a property, you have to pay transfer tax. And the transfer tax, if you're going to live in the property yourself, it's 2% of the purchase price. However, if you're purchasing your first property in the Netherlands, until a purchase price of 400,000 euros, and you are under the age of 35, you're exempt from this transfer tax. For next year, the limit is not 400, but 440,000 euros. So good to keep that in mind. The other benefit is the interest rebate, right? So the interest you pay on your mortgage, it's tax deductible. Then the third bullet, it's no capital gain. So there were a lot of people in the Netherlands that owned the property for a long time. So they had a huge profit on their properties. And if they sold their property and invested this in a new property, you don't have to pay any tax on this. So of course, you can see all those things. Make sure there's a lot of money in the market. The next one is the free parent donation. So for this year, parents are allowed to give a donation of around, it's a little bit higher than 100,000 euros to their children, if they are going to purchase a property without paying any tax on that. For next year, this will be limited to around 30,000, and you see it says ending in 2024. From 2024, this is not applicable anymore. But again, because of all those benefits, there's a lot of money in the market. Then we have the other very important thing, and that you'll see that is changing. In the beginning of the year, we had an interest rate of around 1 to 1.5%. So yeah, money was very cheap. And then the other thing, you guys mentioned it in the beginning, a reason why people want to purchase a property instead of renting is because the rents are super high, right? I think the rental market is even worse than buying. So of course, people are looking for alternatives. And then finally, and this is, I think, the main reason why prices increase so fast, is that we have a shortage of properties in the Netherlands. To be precise, currently we have a shortage of 300,000 houses, right? So it's basic economics. Supply and demand define the price. So there were so many people looking for properties that prices increased super fast. Well, now we see a lot of things happening, right? So the interest rates have been rising. So that's not really applicable anymore, but still you don't see a major decrease. Why is that? I still think because of this huge shortage. Good question to ask, is it still a good time to buy a property? If you ask me, I would say yes, because the rents are high, but of course it is a good time if you're planning to keep or to stay in the property for certain years. I think it's Warren Buffett who said it's not about timing the market, but time in the market, right? So if you're planning to stay for a few years, then I do think it's still beneficial to purchase a property. Then we have some relevant news articles. First, if you're interested in renting your property out, do keep in mind that there is a self-occupancy obligation. In The Hague, properties up until a W or Z value of 355,000 euros, you're not allowed to rent it out. So again, that's what I've mentioned in the beginning. We can help you with checking those regulations, and yeah, to make sure you make a good investment if you want to. Then NHG. So the NHG limit for this year is 355,000 euros, but from next year on, the limit will be 405,000 euros. Yeah, I think it's a nice change. So a lot more people can make use of the NHG, which gives you some of a discount on your interest. And then again, we already mentioned the interest rates have been rising. I think the current rate is around 4.4%, if I'm not mistaken. But please check with a bank or a mortgage advisor. They do know the exact rates. Yeah, in the beginning, the interest rates, at the beginning of this year, the interest rates were around 1 to 1.5%. Of course, there's a lot of things going on in the world, a lot of uncertainty. So yeah, even after a small decrease in July and August, we still see the interest rate are rising again. The topic of savings, very important. So what would you actually need in order to be able to purchase a property in the current market? We have a nice list. First of all, the transfer tax, right? So I already explained, if you're going to purchase a property, you have to pay transfer tax, which is 2%. If you're purchasing a property as an investment, it's 8%. And I think from next year, it's around 10%, 10 point something. So yeah, you can see the government is trying to ban investors or make it more difficult for them and give starters a better chance at the current market. Then the notary, of course, you need a notary when you purchase a property. So for the mortgage deed, it depends a little bit on the notary you choose or the location where you're at. Mortgage deed between 600 and 1,100 euros. Same for the transfer deed. Good to know, everything in the process which is mortgage related is tax deductible. So also your mortgage broker or your bank, it depends, the bank is a little bit cheaper, but I do recommend to at least have a chat with an independent mortgage advisor. Of course, the bank, they can offer you different types of mortgages, but an independent mortgage advisor can offer you maybe 30 different mortgage suppliers. So I think in the end, you will find a mortgage which better suit your needs and criteria, but that's all up to you. Then the typical real estate agent, I mentioned it in the beginning, often they charge you between 1 and 2% of the purchase price. Again, at EHN, we offer a fixed fee, but I'll tell you a little bit more about this at the end. Then the appraiser, you need an appraisal report who's going to define the market value in order to apply for a mortgage. Again, it depends a little bit on the appraiser, but yeah, it's between 650 800 euros. The technical inspector, 435 euros. Unfortunately, not tax deductible. The interpreter or a translator, if you don't speak the Dutch language, it's obligated to have this. So when you're at the notary and you're about to sign the mortgage and transfer deed, the translator will make sure you know what to sign for. Often this is between 300 and 350 euros. Then we have the bank guarantee. If you've signed a purchase agreement, you're obligated to pay a bank guarantee or a deposit to make sure you follow your obligations from the purchase contract. Again, you can either use a bank guarantee or pay a deposit. The bank guarantee is around 250 euros. And then last but not least, so in order to make use of the NHG, you pay 0.6% of the mortgage amount. However, it is beneficial since you get this discount on the interest. 3 tips to win the current market. First one, value, right? I've mentioned in the beginning, market value may be the most important part of the buying process. And I think I can explain you best by giving you an example. So we have this property in The Hague. The asking price is 395,000 euros, right? The market value is 415,000 euros. But in order to make a winning offer, you need to add something on top of the market value. So the purchase price is 435,000 euros. The difference between the asking price and the purchase price, it's 40,000 euros, right? So for 10%, overbidding 10%. However, the difference between the market value and the purchase price, it's 4.8%. All right, let's take the same property, so same example, but now the agent says the purchase price is 275,000 euros. Market value is the same, and the purchase price also the same, right? It's the same property. Now the difference between the asking price and the purchase price, it's 16% instead of 10. Of course, the difference between the market value and the purchase price remains 4.8%. So what do we want to say, right? It is important to look at the market value. The asking price doesn't say anything about the market value. So sometimes, and that was something you saw in the past, that there was a huge difference between the asking price and the purchase price. And then they set a lower asking price to attract more people. But yeah, there's no specific rule like you should overbid by 10%, 16%. This is the same property, but you see the asking price. Yeah, the overbidding depends on the asking price, but you have to look at the value instead of the asking price, right? Because for this one, the overbidding is still 4.8% from the market value to the purchase price. And especially now when prices or values are changing, I would say it's even more important to look at the value, right? You don't want to overbid too much on a property if the value is not that high. So very, very important to do your research first, like what is the value, how much can I finance, and then submit your offer. Talking about offers, right? What is a winning offer? A winning offer is not always the highest price. Why is that? Let's say you've made an offer, but the offer is much higher than the value, and you've included a financial clause, right? So if your mortgage is not approved, you can dissolve the contract. But then the sellers might think, hey, if they don't get this value, they're not able to finance the property. So they will choose for someone a little bit lower, which can offer them a little bit more security. So you can provide them with security in different methods, right? So you can maybe you can provide a letter from your mortgage advisor or the bank indicating like, this is my mortgage capacity. Those kind of things really help, because of course a seller, they don't want to proceed, and then after a certain period that the contract is cancelled, then they have to start over all again. Furthermore, offer the least amount of hassle. What do we mean by that? Be flexible with your offer, right? Maybe the sellers are moving back to their home country, and they want to get rid of their furniture. It might be interesting to take something over. But also in terms of the transfer date, it could be that they've purchased a new build property, which is only finished next year, like let's say summer next year. Be flexible and yeah, it's worth the wait, right? If you find a nice property. And last but not least, offer a personal touch. I think this can really help in making a winning offer. If the sellers like you, it could be that if offers are close, that they choose for you because they like to see you living in the property, right? There's a lot of emotional value attached to properties, so this can be really helpful. Then do your due diligence. So of course we have the technical inspector and the appraiser, right? Those are some third parties we need in this process. And my question to you guys is, do you book them before or after your offer is accepted? Maybe you can give your answer in the chat. I'd like to know what you guys think. All right, I see some before. Omar also says before, one after. All right, so most of you think that you will book those before. Well, let me give you the answer. You book them after your offer is accepted. Why is that? Of course, as we saw in the overview before, the cost of an appraiser are, let's say, 700 euros, and the inspector a little bit more than 400, right? You don't want to pay 1,100 euros every time you submit an offer. So let's say your offer is accepted, you directly start booking them. Because yeah, in general, you have about 1.5 weeks, 10 days between the acceptance of your offer and the signing of the purchase agreement. So the sooner you book them, the better, since yeah, the sooner you have your results. So within those 10 days, let's say, you go to the inspection, you check, are there any issues with the property, right? Is there any red flags? Also, it's nice to have the value before you sign the contract, since you know how much you can finance with your mortgage. If there's something wrong with the property, like issues you did not expect, of course, you can negotiate again with the sellers before you sign the purchase contract. Because if you've signed the purchase contract, you have 3 days, which we call the cool-off period. And after those 3 days, within those 3 days, you can cancel the contract or dissolve the contract without paying a penalty. But if for some reason you'd like to cancel the contract after those 3 days, you need to pay a penalty equal to 10% of the purchase price, right? So that's something you'd like to avoid. So you make sure you have your technical report on time, you have the value on time, so there's no surprises anymore. All right, let's cover everything together with the timeline and how we as EHN can support you. So first you start looking for properties, but before you do that, it is very important to make sure that you know your finances, right? So talk to a bank or a mortgage advisor to find out how much can I borrow, how much am I willing to spend on my mortgage, right? Everything it's quite expensive at the moment. So yeah, you don't want to spend every single penny on your mortgage. So yeah, please make sure you do this before you start looking for properties. Then you can start looking for properties. Funda, I would say it's the main platform. Basically, all the properties are listed on there. Let's say you found something interesting, you can send the property to us, and we can help you with booking the viewing. We can attend the viewing with you. And of course, during the viewing, it's important to ask some questions to the selling agent to check the condition of the property. But what I always say is that it's the most important thing that you need to view at home, right? I don't know, for the ones who already did some viewings, very often within a minute, you know if it's a yes or a no. But if you do want to submit an offer, we start doing our homework. So we'll start with the price research to define the market value. So we'll look for similar properties in the same street or neighborhood. Based on that, we can see, okay, this is the market value. This is how much we can finance with our mortgage. Then the second research we'll do is a property document review. So we'll check all the documents related to the property. So are there any issues with moisture, foundations, specific regulations, all those kind of things? We'll discuss with the researchers, and then we can submit our offer. And once the offer has been submitted and hopefully approved, we need to book in those third parties, right? So as we just saw, you book them after the acceptance of the offer. We can help you with booking the appraiser, technical inspector, and the notary. And once those have been booked and everything is fine, right? There's no red flags regarding the technical inspection, the appraiser, we can sign the purchase agreement. Of course, we will review the contract for you to make sure you know everything about the contract and know what you signed for. And once you've signed the contract, you have all the documents you need in order to apply for your mortgage. Wow. Of course, you still have the 3 days cool-off period, but yeah, hopefully we don't need to make use of that. The mortgage application, it depends a little bit on your bank, on your mortgage advisor, but in general, this will take about 4 weeks. And once your mortgage has been approved, the final thing left to do is to go to the notary's office and sign the mortgage and transfer deed. But before we go to the notary, we go to the property once more to do a final inspection to see if the property is in the same condition as before, right? Let's say the current owner, they broke something with moving out. Obviously, that's something you don't want. So then we inform the notary and they will keep a certain amount in their account in order to fix it. But if everything is fine, you can sign the deeds and you are the proud owner of your property in The Hague. All right, so we have different packages at EHN. With the smart package, we are more like an online consult. With the complete package, we join you to all the viewings, to the notary, to the technical inspection, to the final inspection. And if you think like, hey, I'm more interested in new build properties, we can also support you with that. If you're interested in any of those packages, feel free to schedule an intake with us, and we can look into your file. You can schedule it on the website, and then yeah, we can see how to move forward. All right, Rafaela, are there any questions left?
Hi, Rick. Thanks for the presentation. It was really informative. Thanks. I have one question from Alberto, and he has to explain a little bit better how the tax exemption works. When does it apply?
Yeah. So let me try to clarify once more. So again, if you purchase a property, you need to pay transfer tax, which is 2%. But if you're purchasing your first property in the Netherlands and you are under the age of 35, and the purchase price is below 400,000 and next year below 400,000 euros, you don't have to pay the transfer tax. Then if you're, let's say you're purchasing with a partner, right? So the purchase price is 380,000 euros. It's your first property. You are 33, but your partner is 37. Basically, that means that only one of you has to pay the transfer tax. So then you end up paying 1% instead of the 2%. I hope that's clear now.
Wow, that's very clear. Thank you, Rick. I have another question here from Svetik. Is it difficult, to buy a new build?
Yeah, so that's a little bit of a different process. It is difficult. But you see at the moment, like there's a lot of things going on in the world with the war, gas prices that are really expensive. So what you see with new builds is that projects get delayed quite often. The Netherlands, they'd like to build 900,000 houses until 2030. That was the goal. But what you see is that they're not going to meet this. So then we should build like 100,000 houses a year. The max we ever built is around 70, I think. So yeah, it is. There are some difficulties with this. If you're interested in new builds, again, feel free to schedule a call with us, and we can talk about this process a little bit more into detail.
Perfect. Thank you. There is another question from Oneida. Can you explain more about the permanent self-occupancy? You have to live forever in that house. What happens if you migrate? Yeah,
so that's a good question. So what they did is they tried to ban investors from the market. So you see the transfer tax for investors is much higher. But what a lot of municipalities did is that they said, okay, properties up until a WOZ value in The Hague, it's 355,000 euros. You're not allowed to rent it out. In The Hague, I think for now, this is forever, or for, yeah, it's not that after certain years this regulation appears. For other cities, for example, in Amsterdam, if you live in the property for 4 years, then you're allowed to rent it out. But in The Hague, I don't think this is applicable. This regulation still applies.
Thank you. Joan is asking, what should one look out for in looking for more historic buildings?
Yeah, it's a good one. Of course, it's hard to say since it depends a little bit on the location of the property and other characteristics. Foundations, of course, those are the most expensive issues you can have, I think. So yeah, if let's say if it's an old building, but they checked or renovated the foundations, yeah, that's already a good sign. Yeah, what I would recommend is to look for what are the things you can do to improve your energy label. It's quite important nowadays, I think. For example, historical buildings, the properties on the canals in Amsterdam, for example, they're not allowed to have double glazing. Such kind of things, I think those are important to know before you submit an offer.
Thanks, Rick. I see another question from Joanne. Are there other incentives for first-time buyers?
Yeah, so basically it's only the transfer tax and the NHG, but that's not only for first-time buyers, that's related to a value, right? So even if it's your second property and it's below the NHG limit, you can make use this more mortgage incentive. But for first-time buyers, it's only the transfer tax.
Thank you. There is another question from Alberto. What happens if the cool-off period of 3 days has passed and then after the mortgage application is not approved?
Yeah.
Will this situation happen?
Very, very good question. So it depends on your offer, basically. So what you can do is to include a financial clause. And basically that means that if your mortgage is not approved for a certain time period, right? Let's say you have 4 weeks. Within those 4 weeks, you can dissolve the contract without paying this 10%. But you do need to provide evidence or proof from a bank that your mortgage has been rejected. But if you can cancel the contract without paying this penalty. But if you make an offer without this financial clause, then yeah, you're not, and you have to pay the 10%.
Thank you. What from Oneida? What happened with the difference between the offer and the market price? Does it have to come from savings?
Yeah, so again, good question. So good to know you can finance 100% of the market value. So if we take an example, the asking price is 350, the market value is 375, but the purchase price is 380. That means you can finance 375,000 euros with your mortgage, but the remaining 5,000 euros should be covered with your savings.
Thank you. There is another very good question from Jill. Which costs can be included within the mortgage, or is it the mortgage only inclusive of the market price? Sorry.
Yeah. So again, it's you can finance 100% of the market value. The buying cost you should cover with your savings. So the notary, the appraisal, those kind of things. Your mortgage broker. What you can do is if you want to do some renovations, you can finance this with your mortgage. What you'll need to do then is you need to specify, let's say I want to renovate my kitchen, and then you let the appraiser know, and he will give you a value after the renovations. So it could be that the total cost of your renovations are maybe 20,000 euros, but the added value of your new kitchen is 15,000 euros. Then you can finance this 15,000 with your mortgage. But yeah, you do need to let them know before, so they can make this appraisal report.
That's very clear, Rick. Thanks. Another question, what if I want to rent a room? They would be living in the property, but just want to rent a room out.
Yeah. So good to know. If you want to rent out your entire property, you're not allowed to with a residential mortgage, right? You need permission from the bank. And with a room, it's a little bit different because you still live in the property. But I think you still need permission from the bank, but there's no need to change your mortgage from a residential mortgage to an investor's mortgage. Well, if you rent out your entire property, you have to. But room, I don't think you need to change it, but you do need permission.
Thanks, Rick. One question from Vinay. Can expats with less than 6 months residency in the Netherlands buy a property? Are there any limitations with obtaining mortgage?
So it depends on your contract. You don't need an indefinite contract. So what you can do is you can ask for a letter from your employer. And if they say, okay, we have the intention to give them a permanent contract after this contract, you can still apply for a mortgage. Within your, sorry, I can't find the word, probation period, sorry, you can't apply. So that's something you should keep in mind. But yeah, about mortgages, what I recommend is to talk to a mortgage advisor, and they can really look at your situation in specific. But it is possible to get a mortgage. Yeah.
Thanks, Rick. There is one question in the Q&A from Thomas. How can we know the real market value before making an offer?
Yeah, so therefore you do need to do the research. I said we can help you with that. Since we look at previous sales, so at the purchase price of properties in the past, which for properties that are comparable, basically that's the same thing as an appraiser does.
Good, thank you. And I think we have one last question here. What percentage of the sale price may be financed, and what percentage must be your own savings?
Yeah. So it's the same as I explained before. You can finance 100% of the market value with your mortgage. Anything above that should be covered with your savings, right? So it depends. Maybe you can finance 100% if you purchase a property for market value. Maybe you need some savings.
Thank you. There is still one more question here from Omar. Getting an appraiser after the offer is approved, wouldn't that spoil the relationship with seller after making all the steps you advise to make a winning offer?
No. So it's basically how it works in the Netherlands, right? So everyone books the appraiser after the acceptance of the offer. Making the offer, it's not legally binding, right? So that's only after you've signed the purchase agreement. And again, what I've mentioned before, right? You don't want to spend 700 euros every time you make an offer. I think then the process would be really expensive if you lose out on a few. But the sellers are totally fine with it. That's no problem at all.
Thanks, Rick. I think that's it. I don't see any other questions right now.
Perfect. If you guys have any other questions later on, again, feel free to schedule an intake with us. You can go to the website and then you will talk to either me or one of my colleagues. Again, we will share this webinar so you can look it up. And then I wish you a very lovely evening. Rafaela, thank you for your support.
Thank you, Rick. Hope to speak to you soon, guys.
All right. Have a good evening. Bye-bye.